The battle of the Stellenbosch University continues. The alumni of the university have started a petition to declare a decision by the convocation executive to call for the resignation of the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Wim de Villers, and the Registrar, Dr. Ronel, Retief, as unacceptable. The Vice-Chancellor is accused of giving 2 of his discretionary places to students who were, in fact, members of his own family, or that he was related to in some way. As a result, students who got higher marks than them, and particularly in one case, were not given a place in the medical school, while another who was related to the Vice-Chancellor, who got lower marks, was given a place in the medical school. Dr.Leslie van Rooi is the Senior Director of Social Impact and Transformation at the University of Stellenbosch, one of the people who signed a petition against the convocation executive's call for the Vice-Chancellor to go. Dr. van Rooi, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. What is your view on all of this?
Good afternoon, Stephen. I must just say that, of course, you mentioned my primary role at the university, but I'm a member of the university's convocation as well, and I served as vice president and later as acting president in that role. I think the matter that really came to a focus given the council meeting on Monday is around due process and the fairness of processes to follow. The petition that we signed was not to declare that no wrongdoing is at stake or that it should not be investigated. That was not the case. It was to request that due process are followed in 2 ways. One, that the Vice-Chancellor, and linked with that the Registrar, is allowed the opportunity to, through an investigation, as Council decided yesterday, to indeed indicate what happened and how things played out, and if the allegations of nepotism really is true, if it holds. And secondly, that the executive of the convocation that represents the broader convocation, members like myself and others, indeed engage with the convocation before making a decision, for example, in this case, to call for the resignation of the Vice-Chancellor and the Registrar. So it really is about due process and making sure that fair processes linked to our institutional processes and, of course, also linked to the Constitution is followed in this regard.
You will know Jan Hienis. He's an advocate. He's the president of the executive of the convocation. That's only 5 people. It's not the whole convocation, but they're the people who manage it day to day. He has publicly said that the Vice-Chancellor should go, and he says that's because the facts are pretty simple. As he puts it, Professor de Villers used his discretionary places twice for members of his own family. In at least one case, a student with higher marks was passed over for a student with lower marks for a place at the medical school. So the person who had the lower marks, the only thing they had in their favor was that they were related to Professor de Villers. And as I understand it, that fact is not in dispute. So to put it bluntly, sir, what is there to investigate?
Yes, I think it's very clear that what needs to be investigated, what the discretionary possibilities are of a Vice-Chancellor, in this case the Vice-Chancellor of this university. What is it that the Rector or the Vice-Chancellor can do? What is within his discretion? How does that discretion play out in relation to, for example, the roles of the deans, in relation to placements in faculties, etc.? And indeed, if the Vice-Chancellor in making this decision transgressed the rules and guidelines at this university, in particular in relation to placements, and if his understanding of what his discretionary roles and possibilities or responsibilities are or not is what played out or not. But that is the merits of the case, and I, like Advocate Hienis, cannot investigate the matter. It is not for us to say that it is a clear-cut case or that the Rector indeed acted in bad faith. The only thing that is important for us to say is that all of these matters must be investigated and must be investigated in a decent manner to be fair towards the process and must be investigated without interference also from, for example, political parties and a sense-making around the role of the executive of convocation that is not fitting the role of a convocation, at least not in terms of how it should consult.
To your knowledge, does Professor de Villers deny using his discretionary power to give this position to a member of his family?
That is something that you need to ask Professor de Villers. My understanding is that he indicated that it played out, but that it played out within an interpretation of what the discretionary placement would be. And I'm not here to defend or to support the Vice-Chancellor. That is not my role. It is to make sure that that process is fair, indeed, so that the possibilities of placement at this institution and the possibilities of fairness with regards to placements and processes of the institution serves the ideals of the institution and serves the possibilities that this institution has in relation to South Africa and indeed towards all of its citizens.
Dr. Van Rooi, I'm sorry to argue with you so strongly, but I feel that I must.
You can.
It seems to me that you're taking, and perhaps the convocation or the council are taking, a very legalistic approach. Now, I understand that. We've become a country, unfortunately, governed by lawyers. But I don't know if that goes far enough. Let me explain why I say that, and feel free to argue back. This person, Professor de Villers, runs the university. It's an important university. We all know how important a place at the University of Stellenbosch, particularly the medical school, is. And we all understand that a position in that medical school probably sets someone up for life. He gave it to a member of his family, and that's not in dispute. It seems to me that to call for an investigation when he's not denying it may not be appropriate. It would seem to me that anyone in a senior position at the University of Stellenbosch who was prepared to give that position to a member of their family is just in the wrong. Full stop, finish and clear.
Thanks, Stephen. That is an interpretation. It might be that that is one of the final interpretations for investigation. My understanding is that after consultation, after a lengthy discussion as council, the nature of what is to be probed and what is to be understood in relation to what discretionary means at the institution and in what sense the rector acted out that and indeed taking into consideration the fact that this is a family relations and a family member is involved, to what extent the rector's wrong is in the wrong and how that should be dealt with is the key of the matter. To preempt and to indicate what is universally understood as wrong or what is understood as completely biased, for example, that I think is something totally different. And the argument from our side has been that there is no defense or a push or a clear indication that he is right or wrong. That might be the case. That is not for us to say. Just make sure that in fairness towards the institution and the office, not only in terms of the person, but in the office, that due process must follow. That is true for anyone in South Africa. It is true for every student, every staff member at this institution. That must be respected and that must be allowed.
It must also be true that it's important for the student who was denied the position even though they had the higher marks.
Indeed, and my understanding is that from correspondence from the family of the students that they've taken that into account and that they've made their remarks in relation to the Vice-Rector and in relation to the institution, but that again is for them to say, not for me.
Dr. Van Rooi, let's see if we can agree on at least one thing tonight. It seems to me that your institution is about to be divided down the middle by this. And the last thing we need in this country, and I hold no torch for Stellenbosch, is for another institution of higher learning to be divided as we've seen in so many others.
Yeah, Stephen, we will also not agree on that point, or agree on that point rather. You cannot say that the institution is almost at the point of breaking into two. My sense is that most South Africans, and indeed it is the case on campus, and that is the arguments from both students and staff and members of the convocation of this institution, is that we must agree on a fair process, and that process, not our thoughts and not our opinions and not our interpretations, must lead us and guide us in our understanding of what happens here. And my sense is that the institution, most of its members, both convocation, staff and students, holds and stands in that regard, and that is that fair processes must be in place and must be followed. Also to maintain the possibilities of this institution when we are not here as individuals and as staff members.
Dr. Leslie van Rooi, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate the engagement. Speaking in his personal capacity, but also does hold the position of Senior Director for Social Impact and Transformation at the University of Stellenbosch.